Welcome back to TECHMIMIC, where you can simply view, imitate, replicate, and get on with your day. In this video, we're going to install FreeBSD on an older MacBook Pro to give it a second life. For this to work, we will need an Intel-based MacBook Pro, but if you take an older MacBook, this will mostly be from the time period before Apple made the switch to silicon processors with their M chips. It might also work on an Intel-based MacBook Air, iMac or macmini with some adjustments. A benefit of these older MacBooks is that there is still a lot of variance in the onboard connectivity, like multiple USB ports, an SD card reader, HDMI, Thunderbolt, etc. I'm not going for a dual boot FreeBSD setup here with macOS or any form of a shared partition. I would say it's not unreasonable to dedicate an older Mac entirely to FreeBSD to gain a performance benefit and a supported operating system from it, instead of maintaining an outdated version of macOS on old hardware. If it turns out that there is enough interest in this topic, I can always come back to this later. As such, macOS will be completely wiped out and replaced by FreeBSD in this tutorial, and this will include the internal disk image with the macOS Recovery OS, so proceed with caution. We will have a look at the specs of my test machine and also how to configure Wi-Fi, the GPU, display settings for Retina screens, audio, Bluetooth and other components if need be. Of course, I can't possibly test all the possible MacBooks or hardware combinations, so this is just the laptop I have to work with. There are so many things I would like to mention in an attempt to make this video a catch-all for multiple use cases, but this is just not possible. So try to take what is in this video and then adjust it where needed to apply it to your specific hardware. This MacBook Pro is currently running macOS Monterey version 12.7.4. It is from 2015 and it has a 15-inch Retina display. It has the Intel Core i7 and 16GB of memory. The graphics card is an Intel Iris Pro and it also has a 250GB SSD disk. All in all, very decent specs for turning this into a FreeBSD daily driver. Let's click System Report to have a closer look at the specifications that we might need later. Audio for the built-in speakers should work via the SND HDA driver in FreeBSD, and for Bluetooth there is the Broadcom 2070 module. For the camera or the webcam, of course the integrated Apple camera, and the GPU is an Intel Iris Pro driving the built-in Retina display with a resolution of 2880 by 1800. This shouldn't be a problem because FreeBSD supports high-resolution displays like the Retina display. Intel HD graphics in the 5000 or 6000 series and Intel Iris graphics are supported via the i915 driver. AMD Radeon is supported via the AMD GPU or Radeon KMS driver. And of course the memory 16GB. The USB module is also from Broadcom. Lastly, as there is no onboard Ethernet, we are reliant on the Wi-Fi if you don't want to use an external dongle or adapter. There are a couple of known issues with the Broadcom BCM 4300 series of Wi-Fi chips. Broadcom Wi-Fi adapters will need extra effort to set up or may not work at all without external adapters. If you have a non-Retina MacBook Pro from 2012 and a few years later, you might be lucky with onboard Ethernet. Also, I have not tested Ethernet connectivity through Thunderbolt, USB or USB-C adapters, just to manage expectations. This video will be a mix of specific material related to Apple hardware and links and references to existing videos. Don't worry, I will still mention every step so you could follow along, but for complete guidance and background information, I will refer to and link to existing videos. Think about this like a modular approach where you can take the bits that you want. Some people won't need any help to install the i915 driver, for example, and others will. And now, with all of that out of the way and a free evening in your busy schedule, let's get started. Make sure you have a backup of your data first, for example with Time Machine or any other method. Just make sure there is no data you need to keep anymore on the machine, because the contents of the hard disk will be completely wiped out. If you went straight to this part and you skipped the intro, for this specific video, I would like to suggest that you watch everything from start to finish, so please keep that in mind, because I will reference some topics and comments that are made in the intro. In macOS, there is a feature called System Integrity Protection, SIP, that protects the entire system by preventing the execution of unauthorized code. You can optionally disable this, although I am not sure if it really makes a difference for what we are doing here. I mean, once you actually run FreeBSD on your machine, it's not like macOS's SIP is going to protect you or is needed anyway. I disabled it just to be sure, so you can follow along if you want to and include this step too. You can verify SIP status from a terminal with the command csrutil status. And by default, this will be enabled. If you want to turn it off, restart your system. And boot into macOS recovery by holding Command and R during startup. Once there, select Utilities, Terminal, and issue the following command to disable SIP. csrutil disable. Then exit from the recovery mode. And boot back into macOS again. And verify your work. csrutil status. And indeed, system integrity protection is now disabled. In the spirit of this video, and still with an intact macOS, we will create the bootable USB from macOS without the need for any third-party tools. Skip this step if you already have a bootable USB stick with FreeBSD on it. The related video is shown on screen now, and that will contain the full details on how to do this, and it will be linked below for your convenience. From FreeBSD's website, I could go for version 14.2 that got released very recently. But for now I will stick with FreeBSD 14.1 that is known to be stable and until a few days ago was the most recent version. The .iso file is downloaded to the downloads folder. At this point I will connect a USB stick to the MacBook and it should show up with a disk ID. One of those disks is the USB stick. We can check this with the command diskutil list. Search for something you recognize here, and here I can see that dev disk 2 is marked as physical and it has the size I know the USB stick to be. Ignore the various file systems, this is a USB drive I've used before. Partitions are not important anyway, because the following command will wipe the USB drive and make the bootable ISO for us. We just need the disk ID number. Most likely you will need to use sudo for this, so type sudo dd if equals and then the path to the .iso file. of equals /dev/disk and then the number of the disk. bs equals 1 capital M. And hit enter. Now provide your password and wait a few minutes. So the dd command is going to write your ISO file to the USB stick with the input file if and the output file of. It will have a block size of 1 MB. Nothing happens until it is finished, so if you would like to see a progress bar, you can add status equals progress to the dd command. If the records in and records out are a match, let's exit the terminal and shut down the machine with the USB stick still attached. To boot from the USB, start and hold the Option key during startup, and this will present a boot device selection interface. Then select EFI boot. Now FreeBSD will start from the USB stick and select Option 1 or wait for the timeout from the menu. You can try to select Live System to see if there are any big issues with booting FreeBSD, but here I go straight for the install. And once again, if you would like some guidance, you can follow the video how to install FreeBSD 14.1 step by step and start at step number 4, starting the installer. And just like in that video, I will also create a local user account besides the root account. I won't explain every step here, but it will be in the mentioned video. The first step of the FreeBSD installer is to select a key map, where I would like to point out that there are specific MacBook and MacBook Pro key maps available that you could select from. I've also spotted a UK, a Swiss and a Danish MacBook key map in the list. Just skip the configuration of IP version 4 or IP version 6 interfaces, as they won't work at this point, unless you have a MacBook with an Ethernet connection, that is. The only other place where you will see any reference to your MacBook is during the partitioning of the disk, where you can find the Apple SSD listed. Now reboot the machine and log in as a root. And at this point FreeBSD is installed, but we have some configuration ahead of us. I have mentioned that I've also created a local user account besides the root account during the installation, and if you would like to add the local user to the sudo group, there is yet another video, how to configure and use su, wheel and sudo in FreeBSD for you to follow along with. It is possible to get the internal Broadcom Wi-Fi card to work, but it is not officially supported by FreeBSD, hence it will require some special work. It's all over the FreeBSD forums that the Broadcom BCM 4300 series is simply not supported by FreeBSD, and your best bet is to get a dongle, so you can attach a physical Ethernet cable, or just go for a cheap and cheerful but generic wireless USB stick. So what I have decided to do is not to try to fix this particular issue right now, we have bigger fish to fry, but just accept the fact that I either need a wired network or an additional dongle. What I did is just connect a TP-Link USB Wi-Fi dongle. If you like a good challenge, you can get the Broadcom Wi-Fi to work, it is possible, and this will be the topic of a dedicated video. For now, I can suggest that you follow the video how to configure wireless networking in FreeBSD to configure your wireless dongle. Again, I won't provide too much details here, the entire process is discussed in the related video I've just mentioned. Now that there is internet connectivity, update the package repository and the installed packages in preparation for the next steps. pkg update and pkg upgrade. You can start using FreeBSD as is, of course, but chances are that you would like a graphical environment. Before we install a desktop manager, follow the video how to configure Intel integrated graphics in FreeBSD for a step-by-step explanation to configure the Intel graphics card. If you happen to have an NVIDIA GPU in your Intel-based MacBook Pro, there's the video how to configure NVIDIA graphics in FreeBSD. Once your graphics driver is installed, it is time to install the X Windows system and a desktop manager. I will use XFCE for the remainder of this video, but you can adjust accordingly. For guidance, follow the video how to install XFCE on FreeBSD, or select any of the other flavors. There are videos for several different desktop managers like LXQT, KDE, Mate, GNOME and Cinnamon. The majority of all the commands in the rest of this video are terminal based, so you can still use them despite your preference in Desktop Manager. Once this is done, boot into XFCE and we can then start with the Mac specific configuration. It will start with a very high resolution, so the Intel drivers are working and my connected external screen is serving as an extended desktop. Let's change this. I will close the lid on my MacBook and I will work only on the external screen for this video, so I will disable the built-in display. But even when I disconnect the external screen, the Retina display looks very good and it has picked up its native 2880 by 1800 resolution. The battery indicator is there, and the power management options look just like we would expect. I can assign actions to specific buttons and configure sleep, hibernation and lockout options. On the device tab, there are model and vendor details about this specific battery. Note that the MacBook's battery life through FreeBSD power management may not be optimized for the device like macOS is. You can look into PowerD, the system power control utility, to control individual power options on a very specific and granular level, but it appears to be working correctly for this model of MacBook Pro without any further configuration via PowerD on my part. Now let's have a look at the various devices recognized by FreeBSD with the command pciconf-lv. We can see various Intel devices, including the integrated graphics controller and audio controller. The SSD appears to be made by Samsung, and the Broadcom Wi-Fi adapter and FaceTime HD camera are listed as well. The command USB config list shows the USB hub, the Bluetooth controller, the internal Apple keyboard and trackpad. USB is working out of the box as we have already seen after having connected the TP-Link Wi-Fi USB adapter. Also, meanwhile, I have attached an external Logitech mouse via a USB receiver, and also that works without any problems. Use the command sudo camcontrol devlist to display the various storage devices, in this case the internal SSD and the SD card reader. The good news is that the sound will work out of the box, but the bad news is that it is not configured properly and you won't hear it. In a typical configuration there are internal speakers, external speakers of an external screen, and a headphone jack to deal with. You can very quickly test your sound with the very handy little beep command. If you do hear something at this point, congratulations, you are lucky and most likely you are now done. But most of us will have to do some configuration. The next step is optional, but I would like to have a graphical utility to show the various output devices. But in XFCE, by default, there is no multimedia group. There might be in other desktop managers. Let's install the Pulse Audio Volume Control application with the commands sudo pkg install xfce4-volumd-pulse and sudo pkg install xfce4-pulse audio-plugin. Now there is a multimedia group with the Pulse Audio Volume Control listed in the menu. On the Output Device tab, there is the external HDMI speaker visible, including the internal speakers and the headphones. Of course, because we only installed an app and nothing else, the beep command still won't produce any sound. Completely optional, but I would like to start a YouTube video so that we can check the actual voice and music instead of just a beep. So I will install Firefox to open a YouTube video later on and test for sound. If you have an audio file somewhere, that will do just fine too. While Firefox is installing, let me make the required changes. The file dev.snd-stat contains information about the installed audio devices. Check the contents with cat/dev/snd-stat. And here you will see a very similar list as there was in the Pulse Audio Volume Control application. Now issue the command sudo sysctl dev.hdac.1.pindump equals 1. This will have now dumped configuration information in the kernel ring buffer. Check it with dmesg. Without going into great technical detail, make a note of the pinout of your two, because stereo, speakers. In this MacBook they are on pins 18 and 19 and we will have to combine them into a single association. Now edit the file bootdevice.hints with your favorite editor, again I'm using VI, and add the lines that are on screen now. The first two lines will mention pin 18 and pin 19 and they will both be combined into a single association, number 2. The headphones are on pin 16 and to get the sound actually being produced, we need a line for the GPO config. There is a link in the description to TECHMIMIC's GitHub page if you would like to simply copy and paste this text. The source to this sound information I found in a great article by Joshua Rogers and it's linked below. Save and exit the file, and in the case of VI this will be :WQ! Meanwhile, Firefox is installed, but just to show it won't work until a reboot, let's try beep again. And nothing as expected. And when you play a YouTube video and check Pulse Audio, there's clearly something being played, but no sound is being produced just yet. It's time to reboot the machine. After the reboot, beep will produce the long-awaited beep. And also YouTube videos are now with sound. Bluetooth should work out of the box. Check the Bluetooth controller with the command sudo usb-config list. The Bluetooth controller is the device UGen 0.4. Get further information with the command sudo usb-config -d, then your device show_ifdrv. It's reported to be working at full speed and the power is currently on. To get the Bluetooth address and even more info, sudo hccontrol-n ubt0hci inquiry. ubt0hci refers to the USB Bluetooth host controller interface driver on FreeBSD. The Bluetooth address is visible here. I haven't further tested Bluetooth or connected a Bluetooth device, but it appears to be working. The SD card reader works out of the box as discussed before, and it is listed as part of the USB config list and cam control devlist commands. The internal trackpad is recognized as a one-button mouse out of the box. Externally connected USB mice will work as expected. Multi-gestures on the trackpad are possible, but because this is deeply integrated into macOS, I won't bother with this in FreeBSD. I just want to be able to move the mouse with the trackpad and click, and that will work out of the box. Now only right-click on the trackpad is left. I will discuss the MacBook's trackpad configuration in a separate video. The webcam is also detected, but again it requires specific configuration. Also, this will be the topic of a separate video. With all of this, you should now have a working MacBook with an installation of FreeBSD and a desktop manager, ready to give your old MacBook Pro a second life. That's it. Hope it helped, and if it did, please like the video and keep it up. Until next time, bye!